My name is David Brown. I'm recording my first YouTube video in a while. I've already been kind of going in fits and starts on my channel, and I decided to do this to promote something I've put a lot of work into, expense of other things. I have just, within the last month, published a novel. It is halfway between a fan fiction and a parody novel, and it's called Your Princess is in Another Castle. I'm not sure how well this is picking up. It's an illustration I got online from the website Fiverr, someone who was pretty easy to work with. And I have some more artwork I might show. So with this, pretty obviously, it's a parody of NES games. I just thought of two things for the setup. One is, what if a princess that the hero rescued married the villain anyway? And the other was, what if one of the Nintendo characters hooked up with a female, their most famous female character? And from there, I did cover the legal angles. There's really nothing left to be settled with this. If you're not a complete idiot, if you write something that's either a, certainly a parody where you change things around, or even a fan fiction, if you cover the basic things like changing names and doing a reasonable amount of your own stuff, you can get it out there, even monetize it again, as long as you're not an idiot and acting like you can do things that you do not have a right to. You're covered. What's been the really big thing, to the point that I have pulled some old stuff I had out there, is just that it's still supposed to be a huge deal to quote from any song, which for a long time was a big part, almost its own genre of fan fiction. Everyone says you're not supposed to do that without someone's permission. With this book, I had planned to do that. I actually did seek permission. When I couldn't get it, I came up with ways around it, but I don't think I'll be talking about that here. So what I was going to try to do was to record a reading of one of the chapters I had the most fun with. Now, for the characters, this is the main character, King Ajax. This is the space adventurer, Clarissa Neobides, or Meliboea, Mel for short. And this is called a Kophon. Now, this guy here is an alien idea I've had for a very, very long time. It was based on a really freaky stop-motion test reel that was made in either the 1950s or 1960s, called The Beetle Men, by a guy named Pete Peterson. He worked directly with Willis O'Brien, and at least one or two of the films Willis O'Brien was credited with, we're pretty sure, were done mostly or wholly by Peterson. So my idea was to have a humanoid and a vertebrate, kind of insect-like, and with mouth parts instead of a jaw. And what I figured out was that that would mean they would not have our version of the ear bones, which will be explained in the part I'm reading, but I'm covering that in advance. One thing I would swear, though, is that in the 1990s, I already had an idea kind of like this, but even I can't remember just how far I went with this. So, with this reading, here's another illustration I did, pretty obviously based on video games. It's the kind of into the relationship. The main characters are involved, and this is them going to what's supposedly a really dangerous planet. All right, Meliboya said. We do this by the numbers. In the viewport ahead, a planet loomed. It was ugly. It was brown. It was the most dangerous planet known to the Star Union. I'm ready, Ajax said. So am I, said his maiden Opalina. I'm sorry, if it's all the same, I'd rather stay up here and read, Maiden Persephone said. Meliboya dragged her footlocker into the middle of the cabin. She opened it and pointed out the weapons. These are the variants of the 6mm MFC ASK caseless small arms family, she said. She took out the two largest weapons. One had a bipod and a very sophisticated electronic sight. The other had a circular drum and a hard point for a tripod mount. These are configured for tactical suppression and area defense. The first one is my primary weapon, 50-round topside magazine standard. There's room for spares on the side. She held up a transparent magazine clipped to the stock. It was loaded with 10 triangular rounds, each one consisting of a block of propellant around a sabot that held an elegantly tapered projectile. The other takes standard clips or a 200-round drum. Pray we don't need it. She unlimbered a third weapon with an extending stock. It came with a smaller magazine loaded with a shorter version of the ammunition. This is the multi-roll carbine. They'll take a full clip of high-power rounds, but you're better off with a medium 30 magazine, she said. It's what you use when things are getting hot, but you're still keeping cool. She attached a grenade launcher with a 5-round magazine. And this is the 3-centimeter direct-indirect fire grenade launcher, in case you have something to explain. She gave Ajax the weapon. When Nopalina pressed hold one herself, Mel gave her a smaller case that held a nearly identical weapon. This has a longer barrel, she said. It should be easier to handle. Finally, she drew not one but 2 pistols. These are close assault tactical for if something gets up close and personal, she said. She waved the more compact of the 2. This is semi-auto 10 rounds. Use this if you ask politely. She attached a stock and an extended clip to the other. This is selective fire 20 rounds in case you have to tell them twice. She gave the smaller pistol to Nopalina and kept the other for herself after Ajax declined it. These are fine weapons, my lady, Ajax said. Mel leaned over for a kiss. Excuse me, Maiden Persephone said. What do the letters stand for? Easy, Nopalina said. She attached a spare single-shot grenade launcher to her weapon. Motherfucking arse kicker. The bridge module of the Amphion, that's their ship, I have an illustration of it, descended to the planet. Mel aimed for a long, narrow ridge. We can follow the ridge to our objective, she said. Stay away from the sand. It's where the borer worms are. Mostly. They touched down between 2 distinct sections of the ridge. Mel emerged in her lorica. She carried the area defense weapon in a tripod. Persephone followed behind in a basic environmental suit. There, Mel said. Think you can handle this? The maiden tried sighting the weapon. She pulled the trigger once. She did not flinch at the short burst of fire. I guess so, she said. She took a book out of her bag. It was on knitting baby clothes. Have fun. Mel led the way in full armor. She wore a full breastplate, sculpted in feminine form, and a heavy hoplite helmet with a steeply sloped visor. She carried her rifle slung in a storage rack behind her. On the belt that supported her greaves, she had holstered the machine pistol and a grenade launcher fitted with its own trigger and grip. Ajax and Nopolina followed in light armor. Once a toothed proboscis at least 5 cubits long erupted from the sand. It whipped back and forth, tasting the air. Mel raised her rifle warily but did not fire. After a minute, the appendage withdrew. It smelled them, she said. As they approached the end of the ridge, she waved for another halt. She connected a small screen to her scope, allowing the others to see what it showed. Ahead were numerous stands of large cacti with asymmetrical bulbous pads and even uglier purple fruit, each as extensive as a small orchard. "This is our objective," she said. "The fruit is the only known source for several highly dense, very reactive compounds. For some races, it can cure cancer. For others, it gets them really stoned. For a few, it just gets their mushrooms fruiting. This is the only planet where the plant grows. They farm it." Nopolina took out a bag. "I collect prickly pear back home," she said. "This should be no problem." She patted the pistol at her own hip. "We will cover you," Ajax said. He raised his carbine. Mel took aim at what looked like a cave 100 meters away. "Run!" The first of them came out as soon as Nopolina moved. It flopped down as Mel opened fire, giving Ajax a good look as it thrashed. Its skin was purple, its blood was orange, its viscera black. It would have been 2 cubits tall upright, but it was clearly adapted to run on all fours. A second pair of arms were folded against the visible rib cage. Its kind were called Kophon, meaning deaf mute. Already 2 more had emerged, then 5, then 10, and then he pointed and shouted as 20 burst out of a burrow in the opposite direction at only half the distance. Nopolina reached the cactus colony and began picking fruit. By then, Mel had brought down 5 of the Kophon with single shots. Ajax joined in as a group of 4 came close enough to hurl their own projectiles. A perfectly spherical rock bounced off his visor. He fired instinctively, felling the creature that threw it with a 3-shot burst to the head. The scope gave him a clear view of the face. Had large eyes with reddish-brown irises. In place of a mouth, it had an array of mouthparts that looked like folded hands, curling and uncurling as it twitched. That was the source of their name, as they had neither a jaw to form speech, nor the delicate bones that were the organs of hearing in earthly vertebrates. What resembled tufted ears, in fact, detected scent like the feelers of a moth. He took down another with 2 bursts. He then fired a grenade set to burst over the heads of the others. That sent them scurrying back. Nopolina opened fire with her pistol. Ajax looked to see 3 of the Kophon among the cacti. She felled one before the gun ejected an empty clip. The others tried to cut her off as she retreated through the convoluted paths of the garden. She took time to pick 3 more fruit for her half-full bag. One of the creatures stepped directly into her path. Rather than reload the pistol, she brought her carbine to bear. She fired the grenade launcher instead of the gun. It discharged a needle canister almost point blank into the creature's face. Ajax overheard her on a channel she had obviously not remembered was open. "Not now, Kib. Yes, I am with her." A steady hail of projectiles pounded their armor. Most were mere rocks, but there were also seed pods that burned or burst in clouds of smoke. Mel was staggered by one that exploded in a spray of crystalline needles. Ajax tried to cover Nopolina while Mel continued to thin the main force of the Kophon. A dozen of them were circling the cactus colony. The maiden brought down 3 with 5 bursts, emptying her clip. He took down 2 more and fired his last grenade. By then, Mel was firing bursts herself. At a quick glance, the king estimated that she had brought down at least 20, possibly 30. She slammed a spare clip into her weapon. The cartridges transferred from the clip to the main feed with a clacking sound like billiard balls. "Something isn't right," she said. Then she resumed firing. "We are leaving," Ajax called to Nopolina. He winced as a rock struck his helmet. She shrugged and started running back. "Leave the bag!" She shook her head furiously. Mel traded her rifle for the pistol as a group of 8 threatened to cut them off. 2 more Kofan went down. She risked a full automatic burst without the stock, felling 1 more before the others scattered. She then drew her grenade launcher and fired down a newly opened burrow that they had emerged from. Ajax reached down and hauled Nopolina up, bag and all. Mel fixed the stock on her pistol and loaded a 20-round clip, just in time to fire a burst into the face of a lunging Kofan. They hurried along the ridge with well over 100 of the creatures behind them. The proboscis of the boar erupted from the sand as they retreated. A needle canister from Nopolina's weapon shredded its hide without inflicting serious damage. Ajax grabbed Mel's stowed rifle and emptied the clip. The rounds from the harder-hitting weapon drilled through and through. The creature withdrew. As they approached the module, Persephone set down her book and readied her weapon. Mel dived and pulled Ajax with her as the first volley went over their heads. "Sorry," Persephone called out. As they ran for the ramp, an especially large Kofan sprang out from beneath the ship. It reared up on hind legs 3 cubits high, directly in Mel's path. Each arm bore slashing blades. Its mouthparts spread, revealing a gaping maw lined with serrated teeth that slashed and scraped without the restrictions of a jaw. Mel drew her sword and assumed a fighting stance just before Persephone blew it in half. The Myrmidoness could barely see through the orange gore that spattered her armor, but she made no attempt to clear her visor. She grabbed the area defense weapon, tripod and all, and raced up the ramp. Persephone gasped as Ajax threw her over his shoulder and followed. "We have to go, go, go," Mel called out. She backed up to a wall mount that linked to her lorica. The armor split open, allowing her to climb out. She scrambled into the cockpit proper, clad only in her cingulum undergarment and inner mail. Ajax ran to her side, himself down to an undershirt and athletic shorts. A push of a button started the firing sequence. As it counted down, they looked up and saw a Kofan with a vastly enlarged skull standing on the canopy. Mel pushed another button, and the hum of the engines died. "Well, they let us keep the fruit," Persephone said as they rose to reunite with the main hull of the Amphion. "The fruit's no good," Mel said. "It's the wrong strain and not ripe. The big one was probably trying to tell us that. I should have figured it out. The compounds will be unstable." "I still don't understand," Ajax said. "The Kofan let tourists come and shoot them to collect the fruit?" "I told you they're a hive mind species," Mel said. "The ones we saw were drones at the end of their lifespan. If we hadn't put them down, they would have been turned into cactus fertilizer." Ajax shook his head. "Do people do this knowing the truth?" "The tour guides have kept the real rubes in the dark," Mel said. "They usually empty their guns in the air and run away as soon as they see 1 Kofan, never mind 100. I heard of one operator who got left behind when a mark hot-wired his ship. The ones who pay enough for a real fight are usually in the know. It's not risk-free. About 2% of professional hunts end with 1 or more human casualties." They cleaned the lorica over a grate in the lavatory floor using a detachable shower head set for maximum pressure. When that failed to clean off the heaviest residue, Mel used a flame unit at the lowest setting. Ajax considered the fruit. "Does this have value?" he asked sadly. "Enough to make a profit on a successful hunt," Mel said. She had finished cleaning the suit and started applying a powdered cleanser to the trail of gore on the floor of the bridge module. They figured out how to synthesize the active compound years ago, but it's difficult enough that only the big concerns can really afford it. Of course, they only market their products for approved, regulated medical purposes, and they come down on anyone who tries to cut in on their patents. Gray area applications are only sustainable with a supply of the fruit. Now that I think about it, we could get something for this after all. Ajax clasped her hand. She looked up in surprise. "My lady," said, "I still do not know if you would choose to be my queen, but whatever comes, promise me this: never go back there again." Mel dropped the bag. Several of the fruit rolled out. "All right," she said. "By my name, I promise." Then they kissed. "Now, what are our sleeping arrangements going to be?" They and the maidens considered the layout of the interior. The holding cell had 2 bunks, one over the other. Then there was the main cabin with the one bed big enough for 2. "You can have the bunks," Mel said to the maidens. "It would not be proper for us to share a bed while we are courting," Ajax said. "But would be to share a bed with an attendant," Mel said with a smirk. "It is our duty to the king," Persephone said. "I have an idea," Nopolina said. "There is a ritual for a lord and lady to share a bed before marriage. Lady Narcissa told me about it. We just have to do the binding against temptation." Meliboea surveyed the result. Ajax was tied to the head and foot of the bed, completely unclothed. "You know," she said, "I like your rituals." Behind her, the maidens glanced at each other and smiled. "I could have stopped them, of course," Mel said. She lay in her cingulum, testing her own bonds. "But they were having so much fun." "Oh, I could get out easily," Ajax said. "I just don't want them disappointed." "So," Mel said, "are you ready to propose yet?" "I have not decided," Ajax said. "Well, how's this for a proposal?" Mel said. "Next time we stop in port, we get skunked, get hitched at the scuzziest chapel we can find, and consummate our marriage in the ship lavatory." "Ah, I might consider it," Ajax said. He pondered a moment longer. "Why the lavatory? We have the bed." "There are unique possibilities," Mel said. "I could show you, when we are wed, of course." "Now that I would consider," the king said, and the ship sailed on across the stars. So that's one of my demo chapters for this. I still don't know what I'm going to do with this. Probably sooner or later I'm going to end up posting it on one of the actual fan fiction sites where I used to write. I'm still going to see if I can get some sales out of this. So I will link to the book page in this video, and I might do a few more readings here. Right now, though, I think I need to end this. I'm doing this on a new computer that's showing me it's not fully charged. One more thing I'll show. This is the alternate cover. It's another one from Fiverr, and it's based on a very notorious Star Wars knockoff, which I might actually do a video on pretty soon. So this is what I have for now. So you can read it, look at it, or don't. So I'll be back soon.